and for a brief second, a reflection appeared. It wasn't clear, but it was there. A figure, tall, standing in the background, unmoving, just ... watching. The moment lasted less than a second before the tape cut to static. Martin paused the frame and printed a still image. He taped it to his wall and circled the shape. This wasn't just a man. He was wearing something on his head. A mask, a hood. The features were obscured, but the presence was undeniable. And whoever he wasn't just Lena's captor, he had been with her in that room, with the evidence stacking up and a renewed fire burning in his chest. Martin Carver marched into the Red Hollow Police Department holding the VHS tape, printed photos of the still frames, and a compiled folder of research. For the first time in years, he didn't feel like a desperate father chasing ghosts, he felt like a man carrying proof. At first, the desk sergeant didn't take him seriously. But when Martin uttered the words Maple Creek Lodge and showed the distorted image of Lena whispering to the camera, a silence fell over the room. Within hours, the footage had been escalated to the county investigators. Something had changed. People were finally listening. A week later, after an emergency request and historical property review, a small task force was assembled. It wasn't a massive operation, just 3 officers, a forensic specialist, and a local fire and rescue crew, but it was more than Martin had hoped for. Together, they made their way up the forgotten trail that led to Maple Creek Lodge. Now little more than a decaying shell of its former self, vines choked the siding. Windows had long been broken out. The front door was barely hanging on by rusted hinges. The air was thick with mold and damp pine. Most locals never went near it anymore. It was the kind of place where you felt watched on inside. The floors groaned under their boots as they stepped carefully through the wreckage. Broken furniture, old guest books, cracked photo frames, and dead insects blanketed the ground. Martin led them toward the basement access, hidden behind a collapsed shelf in what had once been the manager's office. It took nearly an hour to move enough debris to reach the rusted trapdoor beneath. When they pried it open, the stench that escaped was nauseating stale air, mold, and something else no one could quite describe. They descended the narrow stairs with flashlights, sweeping the underground with beams of light and radios crackling with static. What they found was worse than anyone expected. There were 2 rooms beneath the lodge, sealed off from one another. The first was empty, except for old mattresses, stained sheets, and metal chains bolted into the concrete floor. On one of the walls, scratched in what appeared to be dried blood or rust, was a name: Lena. The room was cold and silent, but the horror was overwhelming. In the second room, hidden behind a false wooden wall that the search team nearly missed, they discovered something even more haunting: personal items, a hairbrush,